As you guys see on the screen, you are at the iMakeAliving event powered by FreshBooks, so welcome. If you guys are curious where we got the name iMakeAliving, there's a famous Groucho Marx sort of joke where anyone, if they ever came up to him if he was sitting in a chair and they said, "Are you comfortable?" his response was always, "I make a living," and that was sort of the inspiration of today. So that's where we got iMakeAliving. So first thing, I am obsessed with how people make a living, and I sort of come by it honestly. I'm sort of a workaholic who dreams of having FU money. I don't, but it sounds magical. I'm obsessed with how people make a living because I used to have a regular job that paid me extremely well and paid me every 2 weeks. And in my best year, I made a ridiculous amount of money. Like I made like 2-3 times what a normal person should make in a year. And a funny thing happened. After my best year, I had 23 months of not taking a paycheck and not making any money. So it's really a good thing that I did make a ridiculous amount of money. Otherwise, things would have been really terrible. I won't bore you with the whole story, but I grew up in a family business, and 1996, so it was we had a corrugated box company, and I said to myself, wow, you know what the world needs? The world needs white boxes. Everybody had brown boxes. Now white boxes are everywhere. You go to the Apple store. We were one of the first companies in North America to sell white boxes. We had warehouses full of them, and guess what? The world did not want white boxes, and it took me 23 months to pay off all of those white boxes. But it was through that time that I sort of learned a ridiculous amount, and I became acutely aware of money and how hard it is to actually make money and to, make a living. And that's sort of why, we're here today. I've gone from working myself to working for others to working for myself again, and through that time, it's an incredible learning curve. A little bit about me, so you guys know, why I'm credible, and I'm going to say the things I'm going to talk about today. And I was the first international employee of Zipcar. If you guys have ever been in a Zipcar, I was the person that launched Zipcar in Canada. A lot of what Zipcar has as standard operating procedure right now is marketing, were things that I created because nobody was paying attention and nobody told me I couldn't do it. I was the first marketing hire at FreshBooks. I've had a 10-year relationship with FreshBooks. I've worked at FreshBooks for 3 years, left for a couple of years, came back, worked for another 3 years, left for a couple of years, and now I consult at FreshBooks. I've worked for Rogers, which is one of Canada's largest telco. I've helped launch corporate venture capital firms for them. I've helped launch their small business department. So I've done a lot of stuff. So when I tell you things, almost none of it is going to be bullshit, but a little bit of it will be bullshit. So it'll be cool. I've also launched hundreds of startups for people and mentored thousands of people. But I got to tell you, I shouldn't even be here today. Do you guys remember the crazy storm 2 days ago and stuff like that? So I don't know if you guys know who Dick Shawn is. We're gonna do a quick lesson from Dick Shawn. Dick Shawn died on stage in the same place that his character died in a place, and nobody actually knew that he was dead, and they left him on the stage. Dick Shawn, for you guys who don't know, he played Hitler in The Producers, the Mel Brooks movie. I got caught in the crazy storm the other day, and then I stood under an air conditioner for 30 minutes, because that's what you do when you're soaking wet. So you guys are actually gonna get to see pneumonia form over the next 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And chances are I'm going to be coughing and hacking and wheezing and phlegming. So it's going to be like a Gallagher show in the front row with my phlegm and stuff like that. So because, there's a good chance I may not make it to the end of this event, I want to show you the last slide of my presentation first. So if something happens, at least you leave with one nugget of value from today. I get emails like this all the time. It says, "Saul, you don't know me, but I have a story I want to share. About an hour ago, I overheard 3 women talking about you in a Denver airport." Women talk about me in airports all the time, by the way. They're recapping stories you told in a class you taught a few days ago, and while I wasn't in your class, I've seen you speak before, and I know you preach about creating experiences, so I drew flowers on a notepad, went over and delivered the flowers to the women from you. They were really impressed. Keeping you, I like what you stand for, Max. If I do make it to the end of today, I'm going to teach you guys the importance of creating experiences for your personal brand or for your company, because one of the things, we're going to have a conversation now about, how sort of the workforce is changing, and, I believe that there's only really two reasons people go into business for themselves. It's either out of passion or necessity. And I believe the necessity portion is going to get larger and larger as, there's companies that will get rid of 7,500 people, lay them off, and hire 4,000 back as contractors. Those people have to know how to run their own business. Those people have to know, how to be self-employed. We're going to have a conversation around that. It's not going to be so inside baseball or on the nose. It's going to be a little bit more high level, because we absolutely don't believe we have the answer to this. This is not going to be a timeshare presentation. There's no package at the end of this that for $30, all your problems will be solved. Like, we are going to leave here having a really interesting conversation, but we're not going to have an answer. And that's sort of the purpose of this event. We've done it once before in LA, and we're doing it every month in a different city, where we want to keep talking to people and keep the conversation going, but in no way are we preaching anything as the form of a solution, you guys, because we don't have the solution. Maybe in a year from now we will, but we're trying to come up with a solution together. So I'm going to bring out the panel. These are 6 of some really, really amazing people. And when I said that we do this, in a different city every month, we actually, every conversation we expect to be a little different, because the people we bring up on stage are local. The people are experiencing the same thing you guys are experiencing. So it's not like we're flying in people who can't relate to what it means to be working in New York, and it can't relate to exactly what you guys are going to. So I'm going to bring up the panel right now. I'm going to bring you guys up. So please, Andrea, David, Brian, Bill, Sarah, and Bill. We've got Bob and Bill. Sorry. Come on up.
All right, cool. So hey guys, my name is Brian Kalma. I got invited here by Saul. We had met years ago when I was at a company called Zappos, which was felt like eons ago to me, but I had started there when we were, 15 or so employees, and saw the experience of what it's like to have a company grow from that small to multiple thousands of people all the way through an Amazon acquisition. Learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about business. I also learned that what I'm currently doing nowadays is that I'm having a very hard time letting go of what was originally was a specific time in my life that I am now trying to unfortunately replicate regularly. So a word of wisdom is sometimes it's important to let go of certain successes and look forward to the unexpected ahead, which I'm having a hard time doing. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the company I'm at currently is called Catalent. And what we do is we connect us SMBs and enterprises with freelance contractors and consultants. And it's been a lot of fun. First time on the enterprise side.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob. I'm Bob Knorpp. I am host of the Beancast Marketing Podcast. I've been doing that for about a decade. I also started another show called The Station Chief, which is a really interesting show where we talk about global intelligence issues, things like hacking, spying, assassins, all that fun stuff. But it's with a ex-CIA station chief. I teach strategy and execution in the Integrated Marketing Master's Degree program at New York University. And just for kicks and giggles, I do marketing and advertising consulting. I basically help businesses solve big business problems. I look at their brand and I do brand-based management consulting. And I look at where the disconnect is between what you're saying and what you're doing and help them fix whatever is broken. So that's me in a nutshell.
Hey guys. I'm Sarah Demonkoff. Very nice to be here. I work at Showtime Networks. not as impressive. I don't have a podcast. I don't teach anywhere, but
None of it pays well, so.
great, good. Then I'll just keep my day job. I'm director of program marketing and advertising at Showtime. It is a premium cable network. Hopefully, you guys all subscribe. We'll talk about that, how you watch, etc. But hopefully, fans of television. I've been working in consumer marketing and in television most of my career, and absolutely love it. So I feel like I am definitely the one of the corporate representatives here, talking about how I make a living every day. So that's me.
And at the end, we're all going to point at you and ring the shame bell and things like that.
Okay.
I'm Bill Hartnet. Just so you guys know, we live together, and she teaches me a lot of things. I don't always want to learn it, but I've kind of done a lot of stuff. It's always been in television. I've worked in television basically almost since I got out of school, other than I was a receptionist at a hospital. And I don't even really like television.
You got to make a living.
No, but that's what I do. No, so I've worked in television marketing and creative forever. I worked in local television. I worked local TV all around New York City. I was a freelancer. Then I worked at NBC for a really, really long time. Thought that's what I would do forever until I didn't. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And so I'm a creative consultant, and I work at AMC Networks right now. I've worked at several of their networks. My main client there is AMC, which is what I go do every day, and it's great and fun. And it's sort of the joy. Years ago, I was a freelancer, and I thought I would never want to be anything but a freelancer. And then I had a staff job, and you think like, I would never want to have anything but a staff job. And then now I'm a freelancer again, and again now I feel like I never want a staff job again. But if you do have a job, come talk to me afterwards.
Hi, I'm Andrea Syrtash, and I apologize for my voice this morning. I don't usually sound like I'm going through puberty, but I'm getting over a cough. I'm in the media. I'm known as a relationship expert. I find it very funny to shake someone's hand and say, I'm an expert. What do you do? But since about 2004, I have interviewed thousands and thousands of people about dating and relationships. And I'm an author, an on-air personality, so I've hosted TV shows. And yeah, TV is wacky and never as glamorous as it seems. And most recently, I launched a site. Actually, it feels like much more than a site because it's becoming really a big community called Pregnant-ish. And Pregnant-ish is the first ever lifestyle destination for singles, couples, LGBTQ who are navigating the wacky world of infertility and fertility treatments. So I'll go into that more later, but I've been a freelancer for many years, and I realized this was a highly underserved relationship issue, not just a medical issue. And so what my wisdom or little tip, because I like, Brian, that you shared one, so I'll share one quickly, is that I've really, as a freelancer, tried to embrace the ish of things. So Pregnant-ish, I believe in the ish at all times. The ish is not necessarily knowing the where, the how, the when, or the who. You just need to know the what, the destination that you want to reach, and be open to the crazy journey there.
Can I just say that part of my responsibility is to, entertain you guys in between the wisdom. So I've decided that there should be a drinking game. Everybody has to drink anytime someone says more on that later.
I'm David Feldman. I'm a comedy writer, comedian. I've performed here at Caroline's. I started out as a comic because I never wanted to work for anybody. I wanted to be my own man. I did comedy for 12 years nonstop. And then I had kids and got hired in Hollywood to become a comedy writer. When you're a comedy writer, you're working for somebody. When you're a comedian, you're working for yourself. I've never found a happy medium. When I'm working for myself, it's too much pressure. When I'm working for somebody else, it's too much pressure. So Eventually, I'll get old and retire.
So, the name of this is I Make a Living. We're going to ask one crass question. I don't want you guys to say how much you make, because that's nobody's business, but who on the panel gets paid every 2 weeks?
I do.
Okay, so...
By Les Moonves, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we know who to be jealous of when we have these conversations. So, David, it's really interesting, you sort of talk a little bit about happiness and, you're sort of making light of it. But the last time we did this event, it was really interesting. Happiness was a recurring theme. And is it possible to be happy, in any work environment? I don't know if that's even a fair question, but we'll throw that out there. Or is happiness even important to what you guys do? Is it part of what makes you get out of bed? Or is there other reasons that you trick yourself into getting out of bed and doing what you do?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, well, everybody, but you can start.
My father lied to me and told me, if you find the right job, you'll be happy for the rest of your life. And he always wanted me to find the right job. And I don't think a job can make you happy the same way I don't think another person can make you happy. And so it's what you bring to the job or the relationship. And I kept waiting for a job to make me happy, and I found the only thing that makes me happy is cocaine. So, I don't know if that helps, but I recommend.
There's a big difference between happiness and satisfaction. And I think that's the thing that took me the longest to figure out, because you tie happiness with satisfaction together, and then suddenly you're not happy if you're an entrepreneur, because the whole reason I'm an entrepreneur is because I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with the regular 9 to 5. I'm not satisfied with just doing something that has no meaning. But, tying that to my happiness led me to deep, dark depression, So I always take time out to just appreciate what's around me. I mean, it doesn't always work, but, taking that moment to figure out that, okay, so nobody's paying me for the past 3 months, and I've got this guy who's got a 120-day extended invoice, and I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, and I'm worried about this. I'm just like, I take the afternoon and go out with my fiance, and we just have a good time. Why not? It's just like...
But that doesn't pay.
It doesn't pay. No, it doesn't.
So don't you feel you're...
But I'm happy. But I'm happy.
But don't you feel you're wasting time by doing that?
Yes, I feel like I'm terribly wasting time. But at the same time, it's just like, what's the alternative? I can sit there and try to call more people and get more rejection and go through all the stuff that goes on when you're trying to do new business. Or I can just take, 3-4 hours and go shopping. Why not? I mean, why not? Or go to happy hour at 4 o'clock and say, okay, let's have a drink and let's talk.
I wish
why not?
Can you rent out your mother and father? I could borrow them. Wish I had that voice in my head.
All right, so let me ask you guys. So in your introductions, you all seem to be doing a lot of what you've done your whole careers. There wasn't any like, oh, all of a sudden I'll just go to law school sort of thing. So how did you guys, take 2 minutes each and talk a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you end up where you are right now? And was this always the goal, or was this sort of like a happy accident or an unhappy accident?
I'll start. I was a latchkey kid, an only child, and television was my pal. I loved watching ABC. It was the thing that I did to avoid my paper route. So I would watch Oprah, and I would watch General Hospital 3 to 4, Oprah 4 to 5. Everybody was so mad at me that they got their newspapers after 5 o'clock. But that was what I did from middle school through high school, and I just loved television. I loved the stories, I loved the characters, I loved how I could figure out how to be part of that. I didn't really know you could have a job in television, but the way I sort of describe my background is I spent 10 years having jobs. So I went to college, I went to a state school. I didn't particularly excel in anything except something that I was interested in, which was entertainment and television and what's LA, what's Hollywood, what's New York City. I want to be part of that. So a couple of jobs in New York, and they were just assistant jobs, PA jobs. I can't say, again, I was particularly like driven. I just wanted to go and be part of it. But to be an NBC page was really cool. To answer cool people and important people's phones, I liked that. But what I did was for 10 years, just sort of patching together jobs that I didn't pay very much. I enjoyed and experienced New York City, and I loved being in New York. And then I did go to business school. I was working at a production company, Imagine Entertainment, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer's production company, and I went to business school part-time. And it had always been something that I had wanted to do, but when I went, my dad asked me, "Why are you going to business school?" And I said, "I don't know, Dad, but I know that I need to go." And I knew that I needed to discover something there. And for me, education and just learning and being surrounded by people, just like in my work life, but being surrounded by people who were talking about and thinking about, interested in the same things I was interested in. I came out of school just thinking I could take over the world, and got a job at NBC Universal and worked for 6 years at USA Network, which I call my boot camp. I learned about, as I work in consumer marketing now, I worked there for 6 years, and that's all I did was work, and I was dedicated. And to go back to your happiness question, I think it fulfilled me, but I also was happy just working constantly and learning. But I spent 2 years not knowing what the hell I was doing, 2 years really enjoying the ride, and 2 years knowing I needed to get the hell out. And I did, and I quit without another job, and knowing that I would alleviate that job and sort of the pressures of that job, but didn't really realize that I would spend a couple months realizing I had new problems, like how do I pay my rent? And I was lucky enough to be able to find another position at Showtime and have been there for 4 years now. But for me, it was not a straight line, but always going back to just even what I liked doing, and I feel like how I was raised way back when.
I think you said something earlier, Saul, like it was the path we landed on some sort of happy accident, or I forgot the words you used. And for me, I was shaking my head yes, because for me it entirely was. I've learned over the years to trust my gut and not much more. And you know, the pathway to where I'm at now is I would call an entire accident not planned whatsoever, and I live life in what feels like total beta. Like I'm ready for the real thing to start, and it hasn't yet. I thought turning 40 would be the thing, and it didn't happen. And I find myself in this like weird place where if I am not happy, I can't perform. That's just the way it works. And I'm trying to figure out myself how to be happy, right? So put that thought aside for a second. I have a strange little story. As I told you earlier, I spent a bunch of time at Zappos, and my first experience that led me into Zappos is a very strange and unique one. I was at a party with this girl who happened to be someone that Tony Hsieh, the Zappos CEO, used to shtup. And while...
What does that mean?
I think my understanding is that they used to have intercourse, but they didn't have a relationship. Right? Is that
okay.
Yeah. So
call.
booty calls. So I'm with her at this party, and we're making out in the corner. Sorry for the graphic visuals. And Tony, who I hadn't met yet, comes behind me and hugs me and kisses my neck. And at that moment, right, he was messing around. It wasn't like an invitation. At that moment, I actually realized in some strange way, wow, this is my people. And I decided to take a job at Zappos when it was just getting off the ground. That girl also worked there at Zappos too, so it was a very strange situation. But that moment just taught me that the importance of the people who around me that allow me to be myself is fundamentally the thing that allows me to improve and succeed and excel. And once I left Zappos, I went to Guild Group, which is a company here, or was or is, I think it was, a company here in New York. That was an interesting lesson to me where I learned really quickly that the power of the people you're around, at least for me, fueled me, and I didn't fit in there, and I wasn't happy, I wasn't able to perform. And ever since that experience, I've been on this journey to figure out like how to get the self-confidence myself to be happy, not just relying on the people around me. I haven't figured it out yet. And as a result, it's caused a lot of thrashing. I find myself much better at making other people happy than making myself happy, whether it's through my investments, whether it's through companies I work at, whether it's pleasing the customers who I serve. But I entirely lost my train of thought. So I am going to end it and basically pass it over. But basically, that's my unexpected, twisty and turny journey to where I'm at now. It feels like I'm ready to grow up. Hasn't happened yet.
If you ever tell that story again, when you get to the guilt group part, I'm like directing you now. Can you say, and I was making out with another person in the corner, and the CEO didn't kiss my neck, and then I knew this wasn't where I belonged.
That's actually a good mentor.
I got fired and I needed to make money. No, I mean, when you just lose something that's part of your identity, you lose a job and you suddenly find yourself going, okay, I'm at a crossroads here. Do I look for another job or do I just go out on my own and do my own thing? And, I played both sides of that coin for a long time until I realized that doesn't work. I mean, you can't divide your attention. You need to be fully in one place or another. So I went and started doing this consulting thing full time, and it worked out pretty well. It's had its ups, it's had its downs, but it's been something that I've been doing for about 10 years now. And the other thing that I found out when I went on my own was that while you need to be fully invested in what you're doing, don't get tied down to one source of income, if that makes sense. Like every business diversifies. I'm in the agency world. I worked in the agency world, and, agencies go under overnight because they lose one client. And so the same is true with what you're doing. Don't get tied in with one client. Don't get tied in with one revenue stream. Create multiple revenue streams to put yourself in a position to succeed over and over again. Because when something falls apart, another thing is there to catch you. And that's my biggest piece of advice that I learned from doing my own thing.
My journey is really strange. I never really knew what I was going to do. You ask little kids, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I wanted to goof around. And now my kids are already talking to me about what college should I go to. When I never talk. I'm one of 5 kids. Never talked to my parents about what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go to college. My choice of college, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, was I went to Washington State University, which was about 8 miles from Idaho, because it was as far away as I could get from home. And go to a state school. And in Idaho at that time, you could drink when you were 19. That was why I went to that school. Why I got into TV is because I became an English major, because it's like, well, I like to read a lot, so I can read books and do that. So it was like really very little thought. A lot of maybe there may have been substances that influenced these kinds of decisions. So I got out of school and I really had no idea what I could do. So I thought, well, I can write, and really having no idea what you did as a writer. And a guy I knew had a job at a TV station and he quit. And so I applied for that job and I went full on in it. And the next thing I knew, I worked in television. Came to New York because I didn't want to live in Seattle anymore, because I thought, like, I've done this. Got to New York. Sort of everything, like, there was very little. I just sort of did stuff and then stuff would happen. I never really started to think about it as a career until I was about 30. And then all of a sudden when I was about 30, I'm like, all right, okay, now I really have to get serious about this. And I think when you start to think about a career, often you become somebody that you're not. And when I worked at NBC, and I used to do all this GE training, and you would take all this personality test stuff, and they would tell you who you are. This is your natural personality, and this is your adaptive personality. And my adaptive personality is I'm kind of a dick, but my real personality is like a pretty good guy, And the hard part is that when you have to double down on that adaptive personality, it's sort of you become further and further away from who you are. And I also found that what gets you to where you want, to your job, sort of the big job, isn't what keeps you there. Like what got me to the fact, at NBC, how I succeeded is like I worked all the time. Can you work this weekend? I worked for a crazy person who wanted us to work all the time. Sure. Nobody else would do it. I would always do it. I would always be there. So then I got the promotions, I got the jobs, and then I got to that point where I was the guy, and I thought, well, man, if I just keep working really, really hard, that will keep me here. No, it doesn't work. And then I thought I would work at NBC forever, and then I didn't. And so then all of a sudden you're like, well, what do I do? And then my fiance quits when I don't have a job. It's like I don't have a job. It's like I'm already completely stressed out that I don't have a job. She's like, yeah, I'm just fuck it, I'm gonna quit. And I'm like,
what did you do to him?
Job? And wait, what are you doing? And so it's funny, and like what I'm doing now, it's like I'm a freelance consultant. It's the greatest trick in the world. She totally hooked up with a dude in a suit that had this executive job, and now she works with a freelancer, or she lives with a freelancer, and but I really like what I do. And it's not about happiness. I mean, happiness is a funny thing, because I think happiness is one of those things that we're taught from kids, well, you should be happy. And happiness is a very fleeting thing. I think it comes down to, are you content? Do you like what you do? Do you wake up every day and go, hey, this is a great day? And people go, hey, did you have a good day at work? Yeah, I did. And that's what I do. It's I go to work, I have a great day. I mean, it's man, we have 4 kids. We have we never have enough money to pay for everything. And it's either I either got baby shit, from the baby. I got zits with the 14-year-old and attitude. It's there's all these reasons that we could be miserable, but what we do is great. I have fun. I have fun every day. I have fun with my kids. It's what we do is amazing and awesome. I live with somebody wonderful. Am I happy? Yeah, I guess. But I'm content. I like what I do. So.
Do you need a roommate?
I'm going to charge you.
As long as she doesn't quit her job again, we're good.
How about an adult child?
Okay, so of course you know how I feel about the ish of things, so I just want to put out there that I think you can be happy-ish. I think you can be
We made
happy.
that TV show and we canceled it. It was called Happy-ish.
Really? Awesome. Happy-ish is that you can be fulfilled in your work and you can still rip your hair out, because at times it's really hard and stressful. So how I started my journey, to answer your question, Saul, is that I accidentally became an expert live on air on the radio in 2004. I had worked on a book kind of fresh out of school called How to Survive Dating. And I was one of many people working on this book. It was not just my book. I was one of 12 journalists, but I was more extroverted. So the publisher said, go on the radio and talk about it. And the announcer said, we're so lucky to be joined by a dating expert. And I just paused. I was like, that's awesome that there's an expert, because I was calling in, so I didn't know who else was on. So I was like, that's so cool. I'm gonna, and then pause. Andrea Syrtash. And then it was an hour Q&A show where I was making up answers live on air. But it was actually very intuitive for me, because I had always given people relationship advice, and I had, for this book, interviewed hundreds of people about how they survived dating. So that was in 2004. And then, actually, I was living in California at the time and wanted to be resourceful, because now I'm freelancing at this point, and I thought, well, I should go on Craigslist and help people write their online dating profiles, which wasn't a thing at that time. And I did that, and then I joined Wing Women, a company, in 2005 when I came to New York, and I took men out to meet. I mean, it's weird. It's kind of like an escort service. But I mean, I just took them out for drinks with other women and helped shy men meet women. And so I was kind of building this brand accidentally in the dating and relationship space. And then I went to coaching programs so I could actually work with people as a relationship coach. But I always say, and because I'm in the media a lot, we all have sound bites. So one of my isms is I'm credible, not clinical. So I'm credible because I'm a journalist and I've done a lot of research in this area. When I arrived in New York in 2006, I got very lucky and got cast to host a dating show at NBC Digital Studios. From there, other things. So again, my brand developed very organically. But I remember a few years ago, I gave my accountant my files, and I had just hosted a TV show for the Oprah Network at the time in Canada, where I'm originally from. And he looked down at my overview, and he said, wait a minute, you just hosted a show for Oprah. Yep. You're writing for Glamour. Yep. You've written books. Yep. Where's the rest? Literally, he didn't think my accounting was correct because the number was so low. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I think there's, you can definitely, not that I'm famous by any means, but you can have outward fame, for lack of a better word. You can be very much in the public eye as an on-air personality and writer without necessarily getting the paycheck to support it. I kind of joke that the O stands for zero in Oprah. Although I'm very grateful to have worked for the Oprah brand. I've also written for Oprah.com, and it's led me to so many opportunities, so I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I think there's a big misconception. So people don't always realize it's really hard to freelance, and then I joined the Producers Guild because I realized, producing. I need to produce my content, not just host it and write it. And that's how I started to monetize more, and through branded content. So I'm wearing a Movado watch today. I was a spokesperson for Movado. And other brands where I did relationship content, like for Skype, for instance, long distance loving campaign. And that also helped pay my bills, because it's really hard to just do editorial and make a living, and that's the truth. But I'll talk more on that later. I'll talk more about Pregnantish later, and why I also created my own company now.
I started out in New York City, and I wanted to be a comedian, so I moved to San Francisco to be a comedian. And all I wanted was to be a comedian and figure out how to make an audience laugh. And I was willing to sacrifice. I had nothing to lose, so I just gave up all my friends and family and moved to San Francisco. And I had a sleeping bag, a typewriter, index cards, a boombox, and a bag of cocaine, and that's all. And so that's all I wanted to do, and nothing else mattered, as long as I could have a place to crash. And then I fell in love, and that cost money. And next thing you know, there are babies, and you're going, well, I don't want to be on the road. So I took writing jobs, because that's more, you got to support your family. I don't have any advice, because I haven't figured it out. I do know, listening, I was thinking, I think I was lucky in that I figured out very early on that I wanted to figure out how to make people laugh. And to me, that's the only thing that, in my life, how do you make people laugh? So that is the constant. And then how do you get paid making people laugh? And then the technology changes and the jobs change, but I'm always focused on how do you make people laugh. So if you can figure out the one thing that supersedes everything, maybe that helps, because the jobs, the people, the technology changes, but if you have this one thing that you want to do. The other, when you guys were describing how you left your job and then you left your job, shit happens all at once. I was like, who's the head of Uber? Travis
Cal something.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, because last month his mother died in a boating accident, but seriously, and his father was brutally injured, and then he got fired as the head of Uber this month. Shit happens in a wave, but good things also happen in a wave. And I think for me, when bad things are happening, I keep my head down and I try not to ask for things. When you get on a roll, like in stand-up, that's when I take chances. Sometimes I'm lucky, and when I feel lucky, I ask for things. I ask the universe for money, whatever. When things are bad, when you're, I'm not trying to trivialize Travis Kalanick, but when you hit some bad luck, although maybe he deserves being fired from Uber, when you hit bad luck, lower your head and don't draw attention to yourself. And when you're on a roll, ask for things. I think that kind of helps. I don't know.
I know. I heard a rumor that the Uber guy, he's already starting his next business. He doesn't have the whole idea yet, but he knows it's going to involve cars, people driving around and just abusing other people. So
Is there an app for that?
So you went really quick through your journey. People don't know who you are. David's like probably America's best comedy writer, but can you talk for like a minute about Feldo the Clown?
So let's talk about me being the best comedy writer in the. No. Go on with that thought. I found that interesting.
Well, it's
No,
not
I'm
me
kidding.
saying it. Dennis Miller said it on the Howard Stern show,
Right.
so it has to be true.
So I wanted to make people laugh, and I was one of the worst comedians in San Francisco, the worst. And I put on a clown suit for 3 years and did my comedy in a clown suit because I was just so desperate for a laugh. And it was pathetic, but I did it for 3 years. And what I got from that was the desperation of wanting one thing. And I was young and stupid. I wouldn't do it now, but the clown suit reduced me to zero. I think sometimes it's good to be reduced to zero. That's one of the great things about comedy is you can be reduced to zero, immediately. I think that helps in business. I always say every day you start at zero, no matter what happened the night before. I'll shut up, but there's a great joke about comedians that there's a comic comes back to his hotel room and this beautiful woman knocks on the door and she says, "I saw your show. I want to make love to you. I'll do anything you want. We can make love all night." And the comic goes, "What show did you see? The first one or the second one?" And I think that is a great way to view your career. If you're here at Caroline's, if you're lucky enough to be the headliner, you do a show at 9 o'clock and you can kill, and then the 11 o'clock show, you bomb and you go home that night, and the people who saw your 9 o'clock show think you're the funniest person in the world, and the people who saw your 11 o'clock show think you're a piece of shit. And that's why cocaine is so important.
So just so you guys don't think that I just have general questions, I actually have a specific question for each of you that our crack team of one researcher, me, put together. And I'm going to start with Brian. So I'm going to cue you up, and you probably know the story already, but Brian's one of my favorite people, and we met for the first time, it's like 10 years ago, because there's an event called South by Southwest. It's a tech conference and music conference, and I was there for FreshBooks, and I'm sort of known for stunt marketing, and we did like 20 different stunts this year, and I was like, I'm walking around like, my shit doesn't stink. I'm like, we fucking own South by Southwest and everything. And then Brian did one thing at the end of the event that made everybody forget all the 7 days worth of work that we did. And I shook my hand to the moon and said, I need to know this person, and either make him my friend or put him in a burlap sack and throw him in a river. But can you tell the story of that?
So I guess I can't remember if it was 2007 or 2008, but one of those years, let's say 2007 and a half. And the year before the event Saul was talking about, myself and two others from Zappos went to South by Southwest, and it rained every single day. And without doing any research, we just assumed it rained there all the time, but apparently it's pretty infrequent that it rained in March in Austin, Texas. So we had this thought that, well, next year we're going to come back and we're going to take advantage of this crazy rain and give out 5,000 Zappos branded ponchos. And it didn't rain that next year. So we sent the ponchos back, and then the following year we brought them again. And it didn't rain up until the last day. We're doing our rain dance. It finally rained, and we dispersed the team and asked everyone to hand these ponchos out at all the exits. And they do. And we gave away just about all of them. I think we had one box left. So we gave away 4,900 ponchos and 4,900 people wearing them throughout the city of Austin. Great branding. Everyone was talking about it. It was wonderful until NBC wrote an article on their website that says Zappos holds KKK rally. And it's because these were white ponchos with pointy hat tops that at the time I don't think we fully understood the repercussions of that, not to mention the environmentalists who got on us for handing out 4,900 plastic ponchos that were not necessarily made from recycled material. So while to Saul, it may have been the most amazing marketing event because it squashed all of his dreams. For us, it was both probably one of the best and the worst things that could happen to us. But that's the story of effectively what happened. And the good thing is we did some damage control. And if you search for Zappos KKK rally, it's kind of hard to find them now, which is wonderful. But taking the seriousness of what the KKK is out of the equation for a moment, it was a relatively, amazing thing to see 4,900 people wearing these white costumes throughout the city and say, yes, we were part of it. I think it's good that that's long forgotten. I'm not sure, but clearly he loses sleep over it on a regular basis. So you're welcome.
So my perspective of this story, I'm like, oh man, like we're a brand no one's ever heard of, and all of a sudden everyone's talking about us. And last day I'm packing to go to the airport. I open the blinds of my first floor hotel room, and I see 29, half of the people were all standing in front of my hotel room, and it was just everywhere you looked, it was Zappos, Zappos, Zappos. It was the only thing anyone was talking about. I didn't see a burning cross, so I didn't make the connection. And it literally wasn't until about 3 years ago I wanted to tell this story in a keynote I was doing, and I Googled it to see if there's any pictures, and everywhere it was just a cascade of KKK things, and I'd never heard that story before, and it made it even better. It's awful, and you shouldn't support the KKK, but it's also funny when things like that happen to big brands.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrible analogy, an association, obviously, but at the same time, I think what we were trying to do from a marketing perspective accentuated and supported the value proposition we offered to our customers, and that was customer service with a purpose, right? So that's the kind of deeper meaning behind it, is that it's not just about doing marketing stunts, it's about doing it in a manner that still aligns with the value proposition you offer to your customers. And that's the thing I think I'm still proud of, despite the KKK unfortunate association.
And this is a whole other conversation for a whole other event, but it's sort of a shame that you do something really amazing and it's almost people's gut reaction is to knock things down and stuff like that, which is a shame. But
we should have been more thoughtful.
I still think it was a brilliant idea. Next time, you have to do them in yellow or purple or something like that.
I think the Grand Wizards were yellow, but I think, without the pointy tops would probably be the better way to do it.
So Bob, you've been in New York 5, 6, 7 years. You moved here to work and stuff like that. What is it like to sort of just drop into New York and have to build a network from scratch? And especially if freelancer, you're sort of dependent on finding projects. You're a master networker and stuff like that. But what is it like from day one?
I'm not a typical person when it comes to being dropped into New York, because I've been doing the show for about 3 years, I think, prior to coming to New York. So when I came to New York, I had 50 people say, hey, we was going to take you out for a welcome to the city party. And they took me down to McSorley's, and I had this great time. And apparently, Mayor Bloomberg had pissed off the Irish because he had said something about the St. Patrick's Day parade not allowing gay people into it. So he was going to all the Irish bars at that time and shaking hands. And he came into the bar while we were sitting there at McSorley's, and they get him to come over and welcome me to the city personally. So I'm sitting there shaking hands with Mayor Bloomberg and having a conversation with him. I've got photographic evidence of this as well. It's hard to go into a new environment and not have any connections. I rarely do that, though. I always end up knowing more people than I think I know because of the show exposure. Fame is such an ephemeral thing, because it sounds like, wow, I have this show and people know me, and I have these weird experiences like walking down 42nd Street and hearing a guy behind me talking about I'm the biggest ad blogger in Israel, and he's talking about this for about a block and a half, and I finally turn around and I say, hey, I hear you're the biggest ad blogger in Israel. I'm Bob Knorpp. I do the Beancast marketing podcast, right? And he goes, oh my God, you're Bob Knorpp, And it's just and it just blew me away, because this guy knew me, and apparently we were Facebook friends and everything. And it gets to your head, and you just go, wow, I'm really somebody. But I know people with 1 million Twitter followers who are, nobody, they can go into a room and nobody knows who they are. My favorite thing to talk about is Brie Larson. I say, what is Brie Larson famous for? Yeah, one person answered that. She won the Academy Award. She won the fucking Academy Award, and nobody knows who she is. And that's how ephemeral fame is. So it's kind of like you just go out and you try to make connections as much as possible, and you try to create for yourself a soft landing when you go into a new environment, and that's the best you can do. And that's what I did when I came to New York. I just leveraged all these contacts I had made from the show, both people who I put on the program and had discussions with, but also people who I'd interacted with via online media because of they're listening to the program. And I just I came in with a soft landing, if you will.
It's interesting when you said people get excited when they like, oh my God, you're Bob Knorpp. I get the exact same reaction when I'm in bars telling people I'm Bob Knorpp.
I'm sure they believe you too.
So Sarah and Bill, I have like a joint question for the two of you. And you kind of touched on this, Bill, when you said, for lack of a better term, you tricked Sarah. She started dating an executive and now you're a freelancer. But can you guys talk, like, what is it like, coming home every day? You're kind of in the same industry, but you're coming at it from completely opposite ends. Like, you've got structure, you don't have structure. And like, sort of, like, is it weird? Is it friction? Do you guys talk about stuff at the end of the day? Is it just you come home and there's no work talk? Like, how do you sort of like, what's it like?
Hold the baby. No, it's honestly, no, we talk all the time. I think that we're both each other's biggest fan, and right.
You bet.
After you said you're happy-ish,
No, we talk about work, and it's funny because I realize, like, most of the time she goes, "How was your day?" It was great. I mean, my days are all the same. I mean, it's like I don't really think about it. I just go do what I do. I'm always interested in what she's doing because she's always working on big projects and new things. And we've worked sort of, we've known each other for 20 years, almost, yeah. And so we've always talked about the same thing. So I guess I'm always really interested in what she's doing. And it's funny because there was a while when I get fired from NBC and I wasn't working for a year. And so I would go out every day and I would put on a suit and tie and I would go into the city and I would go shake hands and meet people. I'd go to meetups and stuff. And I would really try to invent my day as I was looking for work. And I would try to keep really busy. And she would ask me and I would go through great excruciating detail of everything I did, which was basically fucking nothing. And what was great is she was so supportive of it because it's like I had to have, like after 20 years of working, like I'm doing nothing. And it was amazing because every day she would act like really interested, like, and you had coffee? Wow, and because to me it was like I had to have a purpose. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have known each other for 20 years. We've been together for 10. And I would say, the way I take a big giant step back, the way I think we would both look at our relationship, our friendship, our time together is I was the kid and he was the adult and he was the executive in a suit and I was wooed and wanted to be wooed and we fell in love. And I think that again I was the more junior of the two from a career perspective, and then at some point it flipped and Bill, talk about shit happening all at the same time. There was being fired. Sorry, I'm telling your story. Being fired and getting a divorce all sort of within the same time period. But I was there through the good stuff, there through the not so good stuff. And I think where our careers have landed at this point is, he's a perma Lance, so really steady in terms of hours, really steady in terms of, having a place to go and something that he does, and he can actually create a product every day. It's great for being a parent because he goes in at the same time. There's not a tremendous amount of meetings or demand. He just has work to get done during that day. And for me, I think it allows me the opportunity to flourish in potentially flourish in my career. So I do think that we've flipped, and that wasn't an overnight thing. I think it's been a long process, but the way I look at it is that next big job is probably going to come from me, and I might not be able to be home in the morning. I might not be able to be home at night, and now it will be him that will be there. And I believe very strongly. I hope he'll be there, because I can't afford that nanny. But I believe very strongly in Sheryl Sandberg in her Lean In book, talking about having a great partner. I think that's what Bill and I do for each other, and I think it's probably why we're sitting here, and kind of what we represent on this panel is that we're doing it together, and that we lean on each other. I would say, people talk about having mentors, people talk about support. I believe Bill is by far more intelligent than me. He is better read. I glean his knowledge, and I listen to this is why I was so actively listening to him, because he is so much smarter than me and helps me be better. And what I say is that I over-index in self-confidence, so I give and share that with him, and in return, he really, it's his undying love, but also his knowledge and smarts that I need so badly. So that's how it works. Does that answer any questions?
Yeah, and when you talked about being reduced to zero, because not only so I'm going through divorce that went on forever, which is really, it's really sad. Don't ever get divorced unless you're really happy. Sorry. But she quit her job, I wasn't working, and then she got pregnant. And so
and then we moved into a really expensive house too.
We moved into a new place. So it's like everything bad that could happen happened, and we got through it. And what you said is so right.
Does your first child know that he's part of that bad?
The second one was the mistake.
So it's like being reduced to zero. I think, getting fired is one of the best things that can happen to you. I mean, I think if you haven't gotten fired a few times, you're not doing it right, because that's what you learn from. It's the fucked up stuff. It's the bad things. That's what I think makes your career better and stronger, because you learn how to survive that. You learn how to figure it out. You learn where to go next.
I'll just add, I applaud anyone who is making their own way. I've been a company girl my whole life. I want to be a company girl. And I think that there's probably the safety in the company. Somebody else pays me every 2 weeks. I have medical benefits. I have a 401k. Those are things that I don't want to give up. So I will change my personality. I will become malleable. I had to do that at NBC. I got reviews all the time. Nobody wanted the brand of Sarah. They wanted what they wanted in that job. And I either had to say, fuck you, which I eventually did, but I tried real hard for a really long time to be who they wanted me to be. At my current position, I can be a little bit more myself, but we were talking about, the executive sort of track. When you're lower level, you can kind of be irreverent and you can be who you want to be. The more senior you get, I have not seen examples of being successful, being a real difficult personality. You need to be very vanilla. I think you really have to get along. If you really encourage people, that shit does not come naturally to me, but I want to be an executive and I want to be successful. So you bet I'm going to be like, how was your day? How was your weekend? I don't care. But how was your weekend?
But isn't there a virtue to that too?
Probably.
I mean, faking that kind of stuff through life kind of helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that if it can result in a bigger job, more money, more executive level. It's the way I am at work and the way I am at home with Bill and our kids. Those are not necessarily the same, but I do it and I want to do it. It's a challenge. It's also, if I can do it and I can provide for my family, it actually does give me fulfillment and happiness. But we talk about it all the time. I'm so grateful I have a Bill. and that I can have somebody to confide and talk and be myself. Unfortunately, he gets often the bad side of me because I have to be the good side at work.
So 2 things you guys said sort of resonate with me. One, I've had the exact same experience with personal brand. I have a big brand and sort of a bold brand, and there was a running gag on Letterman, like, when he was still at NBC, so like late 80s, early 90s, where they had, it was stock like footage they ran every night. He would ask if this guy's in the green room, and they would show him sitting in the room and waving, and they would say, it's better to have, and I'm blanking on his name, and not need him than need him and not have him. That's sort of been like my career, where people I get brought in a lot of projects, and people want to work with me until they find out what it's like to actually work with me. And I'm like, I want to tear everything up and make things great, and not everybody wants to make things great, which is like sort of something that I've learned over my career. And one thing, and like you, we've had a similar experience with Bill, where when I met Bill wore a shirt and tie every day. I did a 5-hour workshop in New York like 100 years ago at like the Learning Annex, and there was like 25 people showed up. It was about marketing, and Bill was one of the people in the audience, and nobody in this room cared. It was almost like they were contractually obligated to show. It was like a work release program. So I stopped doing my talk, and Bill and I had maybe the most interesting 3-hour conversation while all these other people just sort of like listened in and took notes, and we've been friends ever since. But when I talk about Bill's transition, I don't talk about his career, I don't talk about anything. I knew Bill in suit and tie, then I knew Bill in suit and no tie, then I knew Bill in just a dress shirt, then I knew Bill in the dress shirt tucked in, and then I knew Bill in a casual shirt tucked out. And that's sort of like...
I knew Bill in a miniskirt. Different time.
So Andrea, you have like 100 things on the go. You're juggling like, we'll say bowling pins because balls sounds weird, but you're juggling 1,000 different projects. How do you prioritize everything? I think that would probably be one of the hardest things.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I am a slasher, like a lot of freelancers. So I'm on air. I'm an author. I'm a producer. I do speaking engagements. I am a producer. I launched Pregnant-ish. Yeah. So part of why that happened is because just out of necessity to, like someone mentioned before, multiple revenue streams is really important when you're a freelancer. But I generally, I literally start every day with a checklist. I pretend to be type A. I say I'm type Andrea, like I'm not type A at all, but I'm trying to be, because otherwise there is a method to my madness, but sometimes, my husband comes home, he's a teacher, so very 9 to 5, steady job, and he'll say, "What did you do today?" And I'll say like nothing, or I'll say everything. It's like hard to keep up, and I know any of you in the room who are freelancers understand that, because I'm always in meetings, and I'm always sometimes I'm on a writing deadline. But I start every day with a simple checklist with what I need to get done, and then what I'd like to get done. Pregnant-ish is new for me, because I've never, even though I built a brand, I haven't yet built a business. So this is very new for me. I have investors, I have advisors, I have sponsors who have come on board. I'm producing live events, I'm doing digital series, I'm doing all these things with many kind of big projects now. So that I need to be a lot more organized in how I present. Whereas writing, if I have a deadline on Friday, I might be up Thursday night until 3 a.m. finishing it, and the editor will never know that. Well, she was probably up also till 3 a.m. editing it, because that's just how writers tend to be. So that's nothing is linear. I keep reverting to the ish, but I have to, because the ish is really that zone where life happens and shit happens and magic happens. Everything happens in the ish. It's the gray zone. I think this culture is very black and white. Very, especially now, we're in a culture that things are defined on the right or the left, literally everything. And I exist in the gray zone a lot. that's where a lot of great things have unfolded for me. So as long as I have a goal, I have a book deadline, I need to do that, or I want to meet these 3 people this month. But I don't always know how it's going to happen, and I would be lying if I sat here and said, oh, this is exactly it's never linear. Like, nothing I do is linear. I will drop everything if I get a sponsor interest and they want a proposal by 5 p.m. So I'm just responding constantly to what in that moment feels like I need to do. And I'm very much led by my gut. I think, Brian, you mentioned that at the beginning. I've tried to replace the word should with the word want. One of the chapters in my book is stop shoulding all over yourself. So when you replace the word should with the word want, that's when authentic decisions happen. Now, sometimes you should, feed your kid. I mean, there's certain things that you should do. But so many decisions in life, love, and career should is usually someone else's values, not necessarily your own. So prior to marrying my non-type, my husband wasn't my type, and it's been 11 years, and it's great because I replaced the word should with the word want. And the last line of my book is date someone you would want to be with if nobody else was looking. And I almost think it's the same life advice and career advice. Like, if nobody was shoulding all over you, what do you want to do? What excites you? And I remember years ago a friend's dad saying to me, it's called a job, not a fun. Okay, I get that. But I think, I like many people on the panel, I just want some kind of fulfillment in my job. For me, my question, and you mentioned it really well, you need to know that one thing you want to do, and then you don't necessarily always have to know how you're going to get there. For me, I want to help people relate better and navigate their relationships. That's just something I'm very passionate about. So I fill my schedule and my days doing that through many mediums.
One thing I learned is dads give really bad advice. That's one thing I'm getting away from this panel, because over and over again we're hearing stories about what dads say about work, and dads tell us really, really bad things.
Well, and I almost married a guy my dad would have wanted to marry.
There you go.
I did not want to marry him. So yeah, dads. That would be a good column, dads give bad advice. Sorry for all the dads out there.
They tell bad jokes too.
So this is a great transition. I want every one of you guys to what advice would you give yourself if you were talking to your 18-year-old self? You've been through the wars, you've learned some things. You guys have shared a bunch of stuff already, but is there one nugget that you'd pull yourself aside and say this was stupid, or don't do this, or stop screaming in meetings that people are killing your babies, or something like that?
Daytime sex. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Because it's just everybody complains about their sex life, and they say it's just if I had a better sex life, everything else would be okay, everything else would work better. And they wait till they're exhausted at the middle of the night and say, hey, you want to tonight? No, I don't want to. Let's just go to sleep. And it's just daytime sex. How hard is it?
But not at the office, right?
Just get a hotel and play like you're sleeping with your mistress and just go. Yeah, it does.
That's right.
Yeah, true, but you can find a hotel.
I want to share actually my biggest relationship tip. People will say, what's your number one relationship tip? Which is a really hard thing to share, but I think this applies to work very much. I always say you're in the wrong relationship, and this applies to love, work, or friendship, if you hear yourself trying to convince someone of your value. So it's really a simple litmus test. If you hear yourself trying to convince someone of your value, it's probably not a match. That's my biggest advice.
Very quickly, I would tell my younger self to learn how to meditate earlier than I have in life, which basically is a pathway to chilling out, relaxing, and not being a crazy basket case of anxiety, which I usually am. But if I were 18 and I would have started meditating then, I probably would be less nutty.
My father gave me actually some good advice. He said a job has 3 things to offer, and you want 2 out of these 3 things. A job offers money, fun, and glory. And if you quit the job if you can't get 2 out of 3. So throughout my career, I've always measured jobs through fun, money, and glory. And you need 2 out of 3. And I would call him and I'd say, I hate this job. He goes, well, are you having fun? And I go, no. He said, are you having glory? Whatever the answers. But he always said, if you're getting 1 out of 3 and it's not fun, try to make it fun. That's the one way to stick with a bad job. I have my corollary. What does corollary mean? Or addendum? I find with people, there are 3 traits in a human being that are negative: dishonesty, incompetence, and stupidity. And if it's 2 out of 3, stay away from them. But you can accept 1 out of 3. I don't know if that helps.
I would tell my 18-year-old self, you are not special. And I think a lot of that is, it's not self-loathing. That is because I grew up an only child and I was damn special. And my parents made me, this is no knock to them, but I didn't necessarily get what I wanted, but I think I got afforded things that not every kid is able to get. And I think the growing pains that you go through when you're a sibling, because I'm seeing it now, what you go through from 0 to 18, I went through them 18 to present day. They're a little bit more painful when you go through them as an adult. And I think that correlates back to the learnings in my career in terms of people aren't buying you. They want you to fill a job and be who they want you to be, not who you want to be. And I think that took me a long time to figure out that I can be special, but if I'm going to get hired someplace, that I probably need to, or that I have found that I need to meld into who somebody wants me to be. That and read the books. I love to read, I never read. And when I say I never read books. I have to rely on Bill to tell me all the books that he's reading, because he's usually reading 7 at one time. So again, I just listen and glean all the information from him. I read a lot of magazines, I watch a lot of television, I listen to podcasts, but I am in awe of how much Bill reads. So I would tell myself to read more.
I'd say,
No, I was just going to say, I raised 2 millennials, and they were all special. I had to give my daughter a trophy because she got a trophy. That's how. I just made
It's
that.
going to be a
up.
rough road for her.
Is that funny?
America's best joker.
All right, I got a joke out of this.
I would say, and this doesn't apply to my younger self so much as maybe myself 10 years ago. It's like unsubscribe from every email list other than the ones you absolutely love. Stop looking at social media all the time because all it's going to do is piss you off or make you feel insecure. And put down your phone. Your time is worth so much more than seeing the 77 anti-Trump articles that your friends are going to post on Facebook, or the people that are going to go say mac and cheese, that is all, like that kind of shit. It's like, really, what a waste of time. I mean, it's really, take your time back and go do stuff.
Trump looks like mac and cheese.
Okay, so we have one more question to the panel, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. So if you guys have any questions, start thinking about them, and we'll get some questions passed around. I'm kind of curious about passion. I think passion has been sort of like we've dropped some breadcrumbs over the last hour. We haven't really nailed into it. My 2 things that I'm curious about, and you guys can pick one or both or take it in a completely different direction. How many people here know Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V? So Gary, for like a decade, his whole thing has just been, find something you love and, make it a business. And I actually think that's bad advice because what if the thing you really love is child trafficking? It's not something you should really be doing. So I'm curious what you guys think. So I actually think following your passion and only following your passion making business is a bad thing. Because I actually worked for a decade in the comic book industry, and when I went into it, I loved comic books, and at the end of it, I hated comic books because I lost the one thing that I really kind of dug, and I think that that's sort of the thing people don't talk about, because for every one person that, follows their passion, there's 99 other people who like weren't successful and hate that thing now. So my opinion is not the only opinion. I'd love to hear kind of what you guys think, but is it dangerous to follow your passion? Do you need to be passionate about what you do? Let's just sort of hear any general thoughts.
Yeah, I can jump in quickly. Like my point on that would be like, and I'm not sure if there's a true difference between the word passion and purpose, but like if you have a purpose in life or a purpose that keeps you going on a regular basis, you could probably find passion in a variety of different things that lead up towards that purpose. And that's how I look at different opportunities, whether, if it's an investment opportunity, I look at it in terms of like, can I drum up some passion about this business to participate versus am I passionate about selling shoes, which I'm not, but I was able to drum up passion because there was a greater purpose towards what we were trying to achieve at Zappos, for example. And I use that as a filter for myself personally, is that, again, just to repeat it again, can you find nuggets of passion that eke towards a purpose that you have to understand yourself? And I would say, I don't think I understood my purpose until somewhat recently, and to some extent, vaguely speaking, it is about, helping other people understand themselves and be more self-aware. And if I could, if there's a way to get passionate about someone else's business or a business that leads up to that purpose, it works, for me at least.
I tried to make daytime sex a business, but it's kind of illegal in most states, so I'm not really going to be very successful at that one. But I don't think there's one answer for everybody. I mean, my passion is conversation. I like to have deep, meaningful conversations. I feel like you can get a lot of meaning out of articles and books and websites and all this research, but ultimately the best ideas I've ever come across have been out of a really deep, meaningful conversation. So that's why I started the podcast. I mean, that was all about trying to have deeper, more meaningful conversations that I was missing because suddenly I was out on my own, let go from a job that I'd had for a long time that I tied a lot of personal identity to, but more importantly, a job where I had ongoing conversations about deep-seated trends and issues in the marketing world. And I no longer had those opportunities to engage with people. So I created this podcast to do that. I don't know that I did it to create a business. I did it because that's what I do. And I think that everything that I've built in terms of my businesses has always been around having conversations with students, having conversations with guest panelists, having conversations with clients, helping to facilitate conversations in group settings. So yeah, my passion plays a big part of what I do, but I don't think that's right for everybody. I mean, some people would be better off just going to work and having a job and doing that job and being really good at that job and saving their passions for the rest of their life. I just believe that for me, there's no boundary between work and pleasure. I know that you need to take time for yourself, but it doesn't fall into neat little buckets. Like I'm not a 9-to-5er. If I need to take time off for myself, I'll do it at 10 in the morning and we'll have daytime sex. And if I need to work until 10 p.m., I'll do that because that's what I need to do. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's where I stand on it.
I think dovetailing off of that, I think my passion is probably myself. So whatever fills my bucket is what I want to do. So if I want to spend time with, I don't always have the choice, but if I want to spend time with my kids, or if I find at work, I definitely work on projects that it just takes a long time for me to get it going. I avoid it. I don't want to think about it. I'll do all the easy stuff first. But something that I'm working on that I personally it gets me going, I will do everything. I will work at night. I will work in the morning. I will think about it as I'm going to sleep. That's what I know. That's where I feel is passionate, but it's personally filling me up. And so that's my, it's Bill, it's our conversations, it's dinners that we have, it's events that we want to go to, that I want to go to, it's travel. I think I find I'm the happiest if I'm connecting that to my passion, and that can be career oriented, that can be personal. It all melds, right? So there's not like the delineation between the job piece, the personal piece, because I'm thinking about it, and I think about home at work, and I think about work at home. But I think it is about how it makes, passion is sort of how it makes me feel whatever I'm doing.
You know, I'd say for me, it's passion adjacent. Because if I followed my passion, I would have a used record and bookstore that is currently out of business. So, you know, what I get to do every day is I use words, pictures, music to tell stories. I love telling stories. I love words. I love music. And, you know, if I get paid to sit and watch TV, that's pretty good, you know? And so that's what it's sort of all things that I like. And so I like to do it. And I think that sometimes, yeah, I think that's terrible advice unless following your passion, unless it's something that you can make at least enough money to get by on. And a lot of times, you know, you can't.
Yeah, well, so passion. I think you also want to respond to the marketplace, like how people are responding, right? Things grew in my career because I was getting opportunities, and then that led to more opportunities. But I want to actually take a minute to share a tale. That's not about me, but I always think of this story, and as I paraphrase it and make it shorter, I might badger it a bit, but I think you'll get the point. Some of you may have heard the story of the fisherman who was catching so many fish, and a rich businessman said to him, why do you stop every day at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m.? And he said, because I want to meet my friends at the pub. And the rich businessman said, well, that's crazy, because if you work till, sunset, you'd catch so many more fish. And the fisherman said, and then what? What would I do? And he said, well, then you could buy a bigger boat. Okay, then I buy the bigger boat, and then what? Well, then you hire more staff and you make even more money. And the story just keeps going on and on and on. And then you have more staff, you have a bigger boat, you have more fish, your career is booming. And again, the story goes on. And the punchline really, because I know it's early and I'll keep it quick, is that at the end of this, the fisherman says, and then what? And the businessman says, well, then you could retire. You could retire kind of young if you do this. And then what when I retire young? And then you can meet your friends at the pub. The point of the story, obviously, is that he was in his little life doing what he loved, stopping early and meeting his friends at the pub. He didn't need to work for 40 years to be able to have that result. And I always think of that story, like my passion, if I'm doing a job, I don't need to make gazillions of dollars. I just want to kind of provide for myself and have a nice life with my family. And then if great money comes, that's an added bonus, but that's not my purpose. Or, in that way I get to live my passion and follow my wants and not my shoulds.
I hear that tale and I think I could retire and trade up to a better pub and a better class of friends. I hate my friends. I'd much rather be hanging out with David Letterman and Jimmy Fallon instead of third-tier comedians. So I have half a thought. I haven't thought this out completely. But as you're going to, like the passion thing, just to be a contrarian, just to keep it interesting, passion subsides, right? Eventually.
I think it changes. I think we all evolve. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering that when you say I'm following my passion, are you justifying your refusal to change and learn? I think as a career, you have to keep learning and changing and evolving. And sometimes I wonder if we say, well, I'm following my passion, it's an excuse not to compromise. And if you don't compromise, I don't think you can have a successful relationship or a successful cocaine distribution business.
I love that cocaine and daytime sex is a huge topic here.
And Oprah.
And Oprah.
2 times she's come
All
up.
at the same
Now
time.
3.
That's right.
If this was a podcast, it would be called Oprah Loves Daytime Sex and Cocaine. So I want to open up and grab a couple questions from the audience. So how we're going to do this is just raise your hand. I'll ask you the question. Shout it out. I'm going to repeat the question. And I'm going to repeat it for 2 reasons. One, I'll say it through the microphone so it's on the video, but also in like a year from now, if somebody just discovers this video online, they'll think I was the one with the really smart question. So does anyone have any questions? Hi, yes.
So it's for the 3 of you in the middle.
It's for the 3 of you in the middle.
We're not a couple, like the 3 of us. Just want to make that clear. There was something going on down here, but that's not, okay.
And which middle? This middle or this one? The you three. Oh, okay.
The Bill sandwich.
This, okay.
My husband's a creative director.
So what I'm going to say is I can't repeat that. So can you try to add a little context to your answer so it makes a little sense?
So the question is, how do we support each other in our careers while raising this gaggle of children that we happen to have from 2 different relationships? And I don't know if I can solve it or answer the question because I do think it's like either case by case or it's the person themselves. I think Bill and I, and you can agree or disagree, I don't think there's any competition between us. It's kind of remarkable, actually. Bill, this is why I am with him, because I have been with people in the past who want me to be something else. Bill wants me to only be me. And I think because of where we are in the life cycles of our career, it allows me, and thank you for saying back that I'm gonna work more and be more successful. Thumbs up, because that's like what I'm looking at, not necessarily what's happening. But Bill does laundry and dishes and is there in the morning and is there at night. I just went away for a week and he did everything, morning, noon, and night. I think what we also talk a lot about is I want him so badly to do what he wants to do. If you want to go for a run, if you want to go to dinner with Salt, do it. Because I want him to do the same for me. I want him to say, you're going to go out with the girls? Go. Don't come home. Like, come home at midnight, whatever. Like, have fun. So we, I think, are very respectful of each other and encouraging. But we do talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we talk every day, and I also think that I see this a lot in not this became the relationship advice panel, but a lot of times in relationships it becomes about because you get to go do something, you're taking something away from me, and the thing is that is the worst way to think about it. I mean, your job is to support each other. Your job is to say, you got an offer to go to go to this thing that night. You should go do it. I mean, and really to make sure that the other person gets to, I like to run. So Sarah likes to make sure I get to run, and Sarah likes to go, she likes to go out to panels. She likes to go out to dinner with her friends. And I really want to make sure that she can do that. The other thing too, is that the one thing that we do, and we do it every week, and it started a few years ago. Sarah said, I want to do a date night every Wednesday. And, my inside my head, I went, that's a stupid idea. I don't want to do that. I mean, that sounds really dumb. But then, of course, I had to act open and I said, okay, yeah, sure. That's a great idea. And so we started doing it. And, like the first few weeks, I was really like, it's date night, and it just felt like something that old people do, but then realizing that I am pretty old. That's something that moms and dads, yeah, that's right. But the thing is it's actually a great thing because we get to look at each other, because I think that you find during the week, and for those of you that are in a relationship during the week, especially if you have kids, by like Wednesday or Thursday, you hate each other. It's like, this sucks, man. It's like, I had to clean the diaper. It's like, that's always the thing. And the thing is we get to spend time at Wednesday night and we're not holding a baby or we're not washing dishes. We're just together hanging out, which is why you got together in the first place. Again, it's really easy to fall into that territory thing of like, and really just to understand this is right now you get to be at home more. he's working a lot. And the thing is to try to figure out how that, it's not a given, it is a give and take thing. It's not like, you took something from my pile, I get something from your pile. You have to let go of that, or else it's really destructive, at least in my mind.
The average couple with kids actually speaks for 15 minutes or less a day. That's sad, but real, I'm sure, for many people in the room. And when they are talking, it's usually bills, housework, to-dos. It's very transactional. So I actually very much agree with both of you. It's really important to connect as lovers and partners, not just parents and roommates. And probably you don't get that opportunity a lot. But the more you communicate with him, the more he feels like he can express his needs and wants, and that you, like Sarah said, let him be expressed. He won't feel as much that you have all the fun and he doesn't have any of the fun.
This is really valuable. I'm being serious because I'm divorced, and we had date night, but it was with other people. And I now realize that my marriage would have lasted had I dated my
Well, it's
wife.
funny. Sometimes I try to mange off a date night, and I'm like, oh, well, why don't we go out with so-and-so on date night? And Bill's always like, that's date night.
Yeah, and Costco doesn't count as date night.
Yeah, and we've done, and by the way, like, it's 2 hours. We do 8, this is brass tacks here, like 8:30 to 10:30. So I come home after work, or Bill comes home after work. Usually the way it works is like he goes running on Wednesday nights after work. I come home, I do the kid routine, everybody's to bed. By 8:30 when the babysitter shows up, I walk out the door. We meet somewhere for a cheap dinner. It's 2 hours. It's $15 an hour because the babysitter sits on her ass and watches Hulu. Great. And so for $30, yeah. So for $30, we get to look each other for 2 hours. Like that, you can't, well, you can buy it, and we do.
No, it's really invaluable.
And just the two of us. Yeah.
Because I think like this, everyone thinks in terms of all or nothing in their relationships, but just do something that's even 2 hours, or even if it's literally an hour where you're going to get ice cream in the summer and just like not with just have someone, I don't know,
Absolutely.
family member.
I don't know if this
Daytime sex is...
Daytime sex.
I used
I
to
don't
have
know if this
daytime
adds
sex
anything.
even without my wife there. I would have daytime sex.
I don't know if this adds anything, but there's one thing that I discovered that works really, really well when you're having conversations is don't go out and sit across from each other at a table. Find some place where you can sit next to each other and have a conversation. And I don't know why that matters, but I eat at a bar instead of a table. I sit in the same side of the booth instead of across the table, because that's what you do at work. You sit across tables from people and you have debates with people. And sitting next to someone puts you close to them. You don't have to look them in the eye, but you can. It's just like it's more about the connection and the physical space, and it's helped out a lot with my relationship.
When you're next to each other, and then I won't geek out with any more relationship stats, but literally it's oxytocin. So if you touch your partner at the end of a long day, actually your brain feels close. You feel more attached to someone through touch. It's like there's so many ways to. It's true. Let's all. There's so many ways to game your relationship in a way that you feel more connected before you're really connected.
Okay, so welcome back to Loveline. Do you guys have any other questions?
For me, I think I was fortunate, right, to have an experience at Zappos that at the time didn't understand how special or unique it was until I was in a different environment, right? And when I went to that different environment, I understood the value of what we were creating at Zappos. And only having that, again, I'm not saying that the guilt experience was bad, but it's, I could read lips. Gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha. No, but like it was the dichotomy of experiences that taught me what is important and valuable to me. And ultimately, it's really about being unapologetically myself. And I only learned that through having a series of experiences where I wasn't able to be myself. And that, taught me a new habit that I still do to this day, almost every day. And I wake up in the morning, after I have a nice cold glass of water, I write down one thing I need to accomplish that day to be happy. And at the end of the day, I either check the thing off or I don't. And if I don't, I toss the piece of paper away and I start over in the morning. And I review these notes that I keep if I cross it off. The ones that I don't keep, the ones that I don't cross off, I toss. And I use it as my own personal journal to tell myself whether I'm headed in the right direction, whether or not I'm having, a fulfilled set of days. And if I could string together several in a row, I gain the confidence that I am doing the right thing. But I only figured this out after having a couple of experiences that were subpar for myself, for my persona, for whom I am. So hopefully that helps.
Is there one more question do you guys have before we say thank you? Look, I'm going to sort of jump in, answer this one. You guys can tag on. So I've said this many times, so this isn't like breaking news or anything. I've had a 10-year relationship with FreshBooks. I think FreshBooks is one of the most wonderful companies in the world. In those entirety of the 10 years, I've never once been passionate about accounting. But I am very, very passionate about the fact that because FreshBooks exists, people are able to start their own businesses. People are able to do what they love. So I'm completely and utterly motivated by that. But I'm not like passionate about the product. Well, first of all, I'm not a product person, but it's like the idea of getting passionate about accounting isn't in my DNA. So for me, I think you have to be, I believe you should be passionate, but you don't have to be passionate on the nose. You can be passionate about the benefit and not sort of the feature. You can be passionate about what it does as opposed to what it is, kind of thing. So because of FreshBooks, like it allows people to, follow their passions and build little businesses or big businesses and take chances and do all that stuff. The whole idea, like when I talk about FreshBooks, I've been doing it for a decade, I never once mention the actual product. I always talk about, the more global idea of the brand and the company and the experience, because like I don't even know like accounting very well, but like it's still something I can get really behind and be like honest about, because I do buy into what it does, not what it is. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's always how my brain has worked. There's always been, I'll never, work for a company that I absolutely don't agree with or anything. It's just sort of like where my head nets out. But at the same time, I can trick myself a little bit into like seeing the bright side of, perhaps a negative situation or something like that. So I don't know.
I'll answer the question more definitively. I think process is the most important thing. I mean, I think that you can be passionate about something, but if you don't have discipline for actually doing that passion as a business, you shouldn't be doing it as a business. So process is really super important for me. It's not enough that I'm passionate about conversations. I needed to be an expert at recording. I needed to be an expert at producing. I needed to be an expert at hosting a conversation, of figuring out what the script was supposed to be. I mean, there's a lot of process involved in communicating this passion to the public. And if I'm not also passionate about the process, then it's just never going to translate into any kind of effective business.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. This was really and honestly amazing. You guys are.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, great.
I did.
Thank
Hey,
you.
the thing.
You can finish it. They were actually clapping. You thought you were.
Oh, I thought they were clapping to. And no, I think that anybody who's working and gets out of bed every day and does something, you can learn from them. If you get out of bed and you face the day, whoever's doing that can teach you something.
I agree. All right, cool. Thank you guys so much.